where everyone wants to be seen, their photography promoted, their voices amplified, a world where creators like me keep on flooding social platforms with weekly videos about all things photography, I invite you today to go deeper into the work of someone who, ironically, enjoyed not being seen or known. And that someone was Saul Leiter. Now, I've talked about Saul Leiter here before on the channel, and you might ask, what's so different about this video, Tatiana? Well, I might say that it's longer and it's deeper. I did a lot of research. We're going to be talking about his influences. We're going to be talking about his photography, of course, his painting, and his philosophy. So we're going to dive deeper into the world of Saul Leiter to understand his work and understand his person. We're also going to be going through this book all about Saul Leiter. I recommend it. Link will be in the description. But before we dive into it, I just want to quickly tell you that this video is also sponsored by our friends at picdrop, and I'll be talking to you about them later on in this video. But for now, grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's go straight to another video. Born in 1923, Pittsburgh native Saul Leiter spent over 60 years of his life and took most of his photographs in New York City's East Village. However, it was in Pittsburgh that Leiter had his first contact with art, where his dream of being a painter was first fueled. As a young man, Leiter would sneak into the library at the University of Pittsburgh and learn about art history. He would learn about European art and Japanese philosophy that eventually came to influence his style and his unorthodox life path. A path that would start with a curious choice in 1946, when then 22-year-old Saul Leiter abandoned his theological studies and, against the wishes of his father, a well-known Talmud scholar, moved to New York to become a painter. In New York, he drifted between downtown apartments, painting in small circles and sketching in the studios of the Art Students League. He would absorb the Impressionist influence of painters like Pierre Bonnat, Edouard Vuillard, and Henri Matisse. And with it, he began an appreciation for color, not as part of reality or a decoration, if you will, but as an element capable of transmitting a feeling. And with the sensitivity of a painter's eye, Leiter began shaping his photographic approach, which would start around this time. Almost by accident, he picked up a camera, a 35mm Voigtlander Vito B, which is quite a humble camera with no interchangeable lenses and a built-in viewfinder, very much in line, if you ask me, with Leiter's low-key and non-technical approach to photography. His early black and white photographs from this period already had hints of his painter's instinct. We can observe, if you ask me, shadows feeling like brushstrokes, negative space guiding our eyes with a moody, deliberate rhythm, where compositions are often sliced by various elements such as telephone wires, walls, cars, or windows. And looking at these images, I can actually see the point of one of Saul Leiter's curators, Pauline Vermary, if I hope I'm pronouncing it right, where she actually makes an interesting comparison between his work and the influences that he had with Japanese art, in particularly with ukiyo-e artists. Now, I do hope that some Japanese-speaking members of our audience, or Japanese audience, might tell me if I'm pronouncing this right. I apologize if I'm not, but I want to explain this further. What does this mean and how exactly we can make this connection and what we can learn from it, of course. She wrote, quote, "The unorthodox and seemingly disproportionate compositions, the emphasis on shapes, the presence of calligraphy, signs, letters, flat areas of color, and negative space, the nothingness where, in fact, everything happens, are all very interesting signs that connect Leiter with this current of the Japanese art." She also adds, like ukiyo-e artists, Leiter was drawn to unusual viewpoints and perspectives such as high-angle shots, strong diagonals, and everyday subject matter, the ubiquity of women, and he had a fondness for the ordinary, a shoe or an umbrella, and its elements, for instance rain or snow. And she goes on pointing out that even with his black and white work, Leiter was thinking like a colorist. He was layering contrast, isolating light, and shaping the image with tone the way a painter would perform with pigment, I'd say. He wasn't chasing decisive moments like Cartier-Bresson, he was chasing moods and impressions. And although the two are united by their love for photography, they also shared an affinity for Buddhist philosophy and with it the art of letting go once the creation is done. And maybe that's why his photographs feel less like photos and more like visual poems. They weren't meant to report or document anything. They were meant to capture a detail, a gesture, an impression, or the feel of something. In fact, he said, quote, "A window covered with raindrops interests me more than a photograph of a famous person." He wasn't concerned with movements or manifestos per se. He wasn't out to revolutionize photography. He just liked what he liked, according to his words. And that meant, as we will see, the ordinary life, color, shadows, foggy windows, half-glimpsed figures, and moments that need or provide no explanation. In fact, his philosophy was that, quote, "Everything is a photo," adding later that, quote, "I take photographs in my neighborhood. I think that mysterious things happen in familiar places. We don't always need to run to the other end of the world to find interesting things." And by the early 1950s, a time when quote-unquote serious photographers dismissed and even dissed color photography as something cheap and just for commercial purposes, Saul Leiter began introducing color in his work, treating color like a medium. He would layer reflection in shop windows, capturing blurred reds and yellows in passing taxis, letting the whiteness of snowstorms engulf entire scenes where mysterious figures pass by. This was his personal work, and he didn't look forward to have it being discovered. In fact, he went on to say that, quote, "There is a tremendous advantage of being unimportant. Looking at the world through Saul Leiter's eyes, though, is to perceive a world full of fragments. A splash of red fabric blurred behind a rain-smeared window, the curve of an umbrella catching the light just so, faces half hidden by car doors, shop glass, reflections, people walking away rather than toward the camera because, as he said, quote, "A person's back tells me more than the front," which links to another quality I identify in his photos, whether intentional or not, but I'd like to call it the power of mystery. And this is something that I actually recommend to a lot of people to pay attention to, and I myself have tried to do that when I'm out photographing, and that's something that I really appreciate on Saul Leiter's work because it's a work where almost like there's this idea of a mystery and ambiguity that is kind of marries really well with this graceful use of color and this almost like sensitivity that is kind of cinematic in a way. And I'd like to say this and to really call our attention for it because I feel like this is what holds your attention and wants you want to spend more time looking at a photo. You don't know where this person is going, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know what's happening, who they are. There's a sense of ambiguity and mystery, and because there is this element of mystery, we immediately as well want to spend more time observing it because we start discovering new things, we start appreciating then the formal aspects of this photograph, and we start thinking about like the potentials of storytelling for this particular image. And before we keep going, I just wanted to quickly share something with you that's genuinely made my photography life a little bit easier, and that is picdrop. picdrop is a platform where you can share, deliver, and organize your photos with clients or collaborators. It offers two viewing modes: the presentation mode, which I would say it's a sleek, distraction-free layout to showcase your images professionally, and an edit mode that enables collaborations, so you don't have to over-explain or have so many different steps for people to follow. You just send them to your gallery. I've been using picdrop to share photo selections for upcoming projects, and it kind of feels like giving someone a curated exhibition of your work, just in their inbox. And for someone who can be a little bit precious about how things look, because let's face it, I'm a YouTuber and I care about how things are presented, I appreciate what picdrop does. Personally, I find the proofing tools such as scribbles, the color flags, the ability to vote very helpful in receiving and giving remote feedback to someone, as well as the ability to receive all changes and updates to my galleries in real time. Now, here's the fun part. If you sign up through my link below, you get not only a 2-month free trial with full access to all features, but I'll also be selecting a few people and featuring some of their work in an upcoming video. Like a small shout out section, if you will, with a quick profile and a few of your photos. So if you want to be a part of that, share your work with me via picdrop. I'll be selecting a few people. I'll be showing your work in the next video. I'm excited about what I'm gonna see, what you guys have been doing, what's your style, etc. And yeah, I guess that I want to thank picdrop. And now let's go back to business. Let's go back to Saul Leiter. In the late 1950s, and thanks to a recommendation from his friend Richard Avedon, Saul Leiter began shooting for Harper's Bazaar under art director Henry Wolff. Leiter brought softness and mystery. He'd obscure models behind curtains, photograph them in mirrors, or blur them through a glass or even a piece of fabric. He brought ambiguity and mood to a world so often obsessed with perfection and it showing everything. In fact, in his own words, Leiter was hoping that, quote, the result would be more like a photograph rather than a fashion photograph. And he went on to shoot for other publications too, and for a while this became his livelihood, giving him enough financial stability to keep working on his own terms. But he never chased big-name status. He wasn't interested in being the next Avedon or Irving Penn. Fashion paid the bills, but the streets, those were his real subjects. Which links to one of the first lessons we can take from him. Metaphorically speaking, you don't need to shout to be heard, meaning that your work should speak for itself and it should indeed show something that is original to you, genuine to who you are and how you see what's around you. In a world of wide shots and bold approaches, flash photography, Leiter teaches us that mystery and quietude holds more weight than loudness. And speaking on quietude, if you slow down, like Leiter's style suggests, you'll see that beauty is everywhere, and that once you see it, remember to not follow trends, but rather to stay true to yourself and your eye. And last but not least, I think what we can learn with Saul Leiter is to be patient. Patient with yourself so you can allow yourself the necessary time to work and develop your own style. For decades, much of Leiter's color work sat in boxes, unseen. It wasn't until he was in his 80s that the art world would finally caught up to what he had been doing quietly all along. And still, he never really acted like it changed him. In fact, he went on to say, quote, I've never been overwhelmed with a desire to have everybody know me. Art, he showed us, doesn't need to be rushed. It needs only to be honest. And so far, we've established that Saul Leiter is a great photographer, but two things can be truthful at the same time. One can be a great photographer and one can be great at something else. So, Saul Leiter was a great photographer. Can he be great at painting, for instance, which is something that he continued producing throughout his life? I guess that I'd like to ask you that. And before we segment into the last portion of this video, where we'll quietly enjoy the work of Saul Leiter in terms of painting, I would like to thank you so much for watching this video, for supporting the channel. Don't forget to check picdrop down in the description, and I'll see you in the next one. So let's enjoy Saul Leiter's paintings.